Well, good morning and welcome to the Employability Skills Series, where we explore the top skills employers are looking for in candidates. Each week, we will cover different topics with thoughts and insights from professionals in a variety of industries. I am your host, Megan Morrow, Associate Director of Career Services, and today I have Joy Rowland, CFO at Mac Discounts, as my guest. And we will be discussing the importance of taking the blame and sharing the credit in the workplace. Joy has been in the accounting industry for over 25 years, working in corporate accounting. She has also worked in nonprofit, education, and auctions. She started at Mac Discounts as their CFO in 2018 when the company started. They have grown from one location in Washington, Pennsylvania to 18 locations in multiple states. Joy started her career immediately after obtaining her associate's degree and continued her education while working in the field. Good morning, Joy. Thank you so much for joining us today, wherever she may be. Okay, hang on one second. We've got another Zoom issue. I'm going to pause this real fast and I will be right back. Guys, we're going to resume our recording. Okay, Joy, are you with us?
I'm here now. Sorry about that.
No, that must have been my fault. We've been having some issues with Zoom. So, okay, so thank you for joining us, Joy.
Sure.
So I went through your bio. I know you missed that, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you decided to get into this industry and like what your career path has been like?
Sure. So I really got into this industry pretty much from high school. Kind of suggested to me or kind of found out early on that, I didn't really care for math. I liked accounting, and was good at that and had some good skills there. So I took some courses in high school and then went for my associate's degree in accounting and started working in the field from the bottom, into accounts payable, accounts receivable. And then as I perfected each one of those areas, I just kind of felt like I needed to learn more and keep growing. So I continued my career path forward and just never stopped learning. Every time I kind of got bored, I felt like it was time to move on and move up. And so I did that, went to culinary school and became a senior accountant there. And then I felt like it's time to move on from there. And that's where I interviewed and met with a person named Sean Allen, who I became the controller at a auction company that he owned. And from there, he ended up selling the company and I stayed on. It became Ritchie Brothers. Long story short, he called me back one day and said, "Hey, I'm starting this new business and wondering, what you're up to and if you're interested in joining it." And so that's kind of how I became into Mac Discount. It's a lot of fun here. A lot of people don't know what happens to store returns, and I found that out. So basically, nobody really knows what to do with a lot of store return items, and we buy them from as a truckload, and we put them on auction site, and we start biddings at $1, and the highest bidder wins. So it's a lot of fun. It's kind of addicting. A lot of people enjoy it. So we started out there in Pennsylvania in one location about 5 years ago, and now we're at 18 locations, including South Carolina, North Carolina, Texas soon here, and hopefully Florida one day.
Yeah, I don't think that you need to set up shop in Florida. I'm afraid that might be a little too addicting, like you said.
I get a lot of people that says, "Can you block my husband? Can you block my wife? Take them off."
Yeah, that's what Angel's going to be saying very soon if you guys make it down here. That's really cool though. So what is it about the accounting field that you like so much?
I like to dig into the numbers and I like to problem solve and kind of balancing. So I think that's just like the analytical piece of it is in my brain there and how I work, and I just need to know how things work and together, and to kind of build pieces of a puzzle to make the entire picture.
That's very cool. I was sharing with you last night a little bit when we were prepping for this call about how we have a large accounting department here at Florida Southern. A lot of our students are really into it, and they're very high in demand too. And we have a fantastic accounting faculty who really really digs in deep with these students. And I think analytical skills, you kind of hit that, you kind of really need to have those skills to be able to problem solve and be analytical and quantitative as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. You have to have the passion for that. Otherwise, this could be so boring. And you find that out quickly. I think I've done that too here. I try to hire a lot of people out of school, just building their careers here. And that's kind of where I prefer to start.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I found maybe a couple people that realize that this isn't quite for them because they don't. I think one thing you need to realize is that no matter what your position is, whether it's accounting or anything, but your position in the company that you're in makes an impact, and you're a piece of the bigger puzzle. And if you realize that, and if you want to know how that you impact that company, then that's kind of where you're going to be more satisfied than just coming in and clocking checking off the clock and coming in and
Yeah.
going.
I like that you say that because a lot of my guests have said the exact same thing. And I know I say this in the classroom all the time to my students that, you have to love what you do. There's no point in going to work, even if you make a fantastic salary, but if you hate it and
Absolutely.
you have no work-life balance and, you're not very productive, it's like you said, you're watching the clock. And like for me, like on like my Mondays, they go from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. because I have a night class and I don't mind it. I love it. I love being here with my students. I love what I do. So it doesn't bother me versus if I hated my job or I didn't have that satisfaction or that passion, then that would be an absolute miserable day. I don't think I would last here very long if I didn't love what I did. So I love
Absolutely.
that you say that because I like when they hear that from multiple sources that, you really do have to love what you do. Um, so speaking, let's dive right into in your role as CFO, you are part of the leadership team. And so I know you were sharing a story with me last night. So our call is about, taking the blame and sharing the credit. First of all, let's just kind of dive into that. Like, what do you even mean by that? Like, why, like taking the blame for what, sharing the credit, like when would you do those kind of things? And how is that beneficial in the workplace?
Yeah. So, and first of all, I think it's great that all these different skills that you're teaching here because they all integrate together. It's not like, okay, I can perfect this one skill and I don't need those. Everything works together. And at Mac Discount, we I must say we focus on these different types of skills, and a lot of them are very close to what you're teaching here. Part of our culture that we want to develop, we have 19 different, we call them fundamentals. And this taking the blame, sharing the credit is closely tied to, one of ours we call practice blameless problem solving. And each week we focus on one as a company as a whole. Each of our locations focus on the same thing, and we're talking about it. And so, like as human beings, we're wired to want to take the credit all the time and pass the blame. And if you think back to like when you're a kid, you got yelled at for something. Oh, it wasn't me. It wasn't my fault. It's my brother or my sister.
Right.
I didn't do it. But then as adults, we kind of need to sit back and realize that in order to succeed in life, we have to absorb that, even if sometimes it might not be our fault. But if we're on a bigger team, we need to work as a team and just learn from your mistakes. So just kind of sit back, breathe, and what habits takes a conscious effort to develop this. If
Yeah.
you take the approach to search for your team, your employees, your coworkers, whoever it is that you're working with and for, looking to see what they're doing right. Take the intentionally look to see what someone is doing right, celebrate the small victories with them, and that's how you can build relationships with the team, with your coworkers, and the environment that you're in. Every day you're there with these people longer than you're with your families, so take the time to develop these relationships. A team wins when everybody works together, so search out individual efforts and impacts which impacts the greater team. So like for example, in the accounting world here, we are no stranger to deadlines. Each person has a role to play in their piece of what they need to do to get the books closed at the end of the month. And that way we can produce our financial statements. But if one person becomes lazy or even sick, for a period of time, that their job isn't getting done, that sets back everybody else on your team, and all of it, somebody's job might need to be done in order for someone else to do their next step. So when that's not done, the entire team suffers. But if everybody works together, you might have to step in and pick up the slack where somebody else is lacking. Because you remember you're part of a team. And when you just go back and you say thank you, you realize that, the job was done no matter who did it. And you just give the praise to the entire team. And, you might need to, at certain times, especially as a leader, you might need to take somebody aside and talk to them, but you don't criticize them to the entire team. You take the blame yourself. You say, I'm sorry, I'll deal with that. And then you go back and you might need to talk to your team and correct the actions, but you take that as a learning opportunity.
That's powerful that you say that. Just earlier this week, I had another guest on, and he was talking about pointing out mistakes without demoralizing. So these go really hand in hand. And he was saying the same thing about how, you praise in public and then reprimand in private. And, again, take that as a learning opportunity. And also too, as employees or just as people in general, we make mistakes. And so you're going to get the respect from your teams, your colleagues, and your higher ups, your leadership team, by just owning it and taking responsibility versus saying, oh, that's not my fault. And I'd like for you to kind of highlight that. Tell us just the truncated version of what you're dealing with now about how it was just, oh, that's not my fault. I didn't know. And how that impacted your team.
Yeah. So I recently had a employee that fell victim to, sorry, my screen went wild here. Some employee fell victim to
phishing.
Yeah, thank you. I'm like,
welcome.
Yeah, a phishing scheme for email. And rather than taking the time to think about, as a manager, as a leader, what do you need to do to validate this, and to reflect on what have you heard, everything and in the environment. And I daily get, I don't know, you guys might too, just get junk mail, phishing mail, emails. I get them daily here. But long story short, she sent several $100,000 to the wrong bank accounts. And these were vendors that we often deal with, who out of the blue said, hey, gave a whatever story they gave, said you need to send money to a different bank account. Because of the volume of the money she gave, we did have to terminate her. And it was very hard for me, because as the manager over her, like I felt responsible too. And I still feel responsible that, I could have had better procedures in place. I could have, tighter controls, and now we do that. So I'm constantly learning as well as the employees. So you never stop learning. You've never let down your guard. And you always take the opportunity to assess where you're at and how you can improve from that.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, and maybe if she had handled it differently, I don't know, the volume of the misplaced funds is probably something their company can't move past. Because it was close to $1 million.
Yep.
So that might be something they can't move past. But I know I've been in leadership positions too, where if the employee had just come to me and hey, I screwed up, and just owned it, and we kind of worked through it, it would be a much different situation versus, well, it's not my fault. I didn't know, I thought I didn't. And then, like you said, just kind of that passing the buck that's just where I lose respect. It's we're all human. We all make mistakes. Let's just figure out what are we going to do to move past this.
Absolutely. And it's a good thing you said that too, where you come to me, because I've had that too. Probably this past week, one of my employees came to me and said, hey, I want to come to you, tell you I messed up. I know what I did. I'm just going to tell you that right now. And, sorry. And, and it was it wasn't a big deal. And she's, turning into a bigger deal than it needed to be. I'm like, no problem. Thanks for letting me know. And we'll move on, and, we'll learn from there. So I think it's, as long as you realize that you can't just blame others. You need to stop and look and see what role did I play in this, even if I wasn't directly involved, even if I wasn't the offender. what role did I play in this? What
Mhm.
is my responsibility to this team, whether it's a coworker, a manager, second level supervisor? How does this fit into what your responsibilities are, and own it?
Yeah, that's huge. Um, I also want to talk about kind of like sharing the credit too. I had a supervisor, and I've shared this with my students a lot. It was when we talk about like, loving what you do. And I had a job that I hated, and the I lasted only about a year. This guy was a micromanager, and he was a tyrant for all intents and purposes. He was very difficult to work with. And every time I would do something that was good, that got recognized across the organization, like he literally took the credit for it. He would send out these emails because this was a huge organization all across the US, and it had multiple locations. So he would send out this mass email to all the executive directors of all the different sites, like, look at all these wonderful things that we are doing here, not once giving me any credit whatsoever, even though it was my project, even though I was the only one that worked on it. It was like, look what we're doing. And I was proud to be a part of that. But the downside was that, like, if any small little thing went wrong, even if I had nothing to do with it, he threw me under the bus. And I was basically the scapegoat for every single thing that went wrong. But I never got any credit. And so on the other side, like, we've been talking this whole time about being in a leadership role and what it's like for your employees. But from an employee standpoint, when you have like a bully for a boss who is doing that, I mean, it's just as demoralizing, and it can be just as hurtful to the workplace culture and the productivity and everything, when you're just like, nothing you do is good enough. And I basically was being ostracized for like everything. And it was difficult. I did not know how to handle it. And I look back and I think like I could have done better. Like as an employee, I should have stood up for myself a little bit more. Maybe I should have, if he clearly was incapable of coming to me and saying, hey, great job, this is what you're doing, maybe these are things that we need to work on. He was doing the exact opposite, like that, what you're talking about, like berating me in public and never praising me. Like, it was very difficult.
I don't doubt that, because it's funny you say that. I was asking my coworker too, telling her, I was coming on here and like, can you think of any examples that, I might be able to share that you had to deal with? And she said something very similar to what you went through. She had two people that were in a equal position. And then that one person ended up getting demoted and reporting to the other. So it created tension on their team. And her supervisor gave her a project. This other guy gave her a project, both equally important. Her supervisor says, don't do his, do mine. That's what you need to do. And then, long story short, the other guy says, comes to her and is upset that she didn't do it. And then her boss says, oh, I didn't know anything about it. And I threw her under the bus.
Oh,
and
no. Yeah.
so she says she just had to deal with that, for a while too. And it is demoralizing. It takes away your steam, your motivation. You don't want to be there. It makes you and she said she loved the job, but she hated where she worked. And
That's exactly what I went through too. I loved what I was doing. I was working with students. I was working with adjudicated youth. I loved it, but not for that person.
Yeah. And, I said, well, as an employee, like, what do you think you could have done? You should have done. Like, how as an employee, when that happens to you, what should you do? And, I think it's, as the Bible teaches us, go to that person, go to the offender and talk to them and tell them what they did, how it impacts you, and ask them to change, to just realize what it is that they're doing. And if they refuse, then maybe, go to somebody else and say, hey, I'm having this problem. Can you help me fix it? And if it doesn't resolve itself, then maybe it's time to leave. Maybe, this isn't the place for you. Go somewhere else where you can be valued.
Yeah, I like that you say that too, Joy, because that's also what we were talking about on Wednesday with my other guest. Like, don't have misplaced loyalty. When you're there, give it your all. When you are an employee and you're getting a paycheck from that company, absolutely, you need to give it your all. But it's perfectly okay to say, okay, I've either maxed out my challenges and where I can go and the skills that I can offer, or this is a toxic work environment for me. I can't thrive here. I know for me, it was affecting my mental health to the tune of like, I couldn't even enjoy my weekends.
Yeah.
And my son was very young at the time. And all I wanted to do was cry, like, cause I was just miserable. Like, I just knew that I had to go back to this work. and it was not good for my mental health. And when I went to leave, of course, I got all the guilt and the, oh, you'll never find another company that cares for you like the way we do. I mean, it was rough, but it was like when I remember leaving the day I left and I started at my new job, it was like a weight was lifted off of me. And nobody should live like that. Nobody should have to go through that. So, students, as you guys are starting your, internships and you're starting, these new jobs and everything, absolutely, you need to be dedicated and be loyal. And that's why it's important to make sure that you really consider those job offers and everything that's in the job. And you're very present during the interviews to make sure that the workplace culture is a fit for you. That's why you should ask those questions so that you're also interviewing the the employer, and that way you're not stuck in a situation like that I had to endure, or like Joy's colleague was talking about, just these toxic work environments.
Yeah.
But also too, the number one thing too, when you do leave those toxic work environments, you never badmouth your employer.
Do not burn bridges. Mm-mm.
Yeah, never burn bridges. You never know. Like the guy from Ritchie Brothers. I mean, you clearly didn't burn any bridges, and you got another opportunity simply because you were a good employee with him, and he wanted to bring you on to this new endeavor. So you can never burn bridges. That always comes back to bite you.
And what's funny too is, as the company grew, we're putting our heads together. Okay, who have we worked with in the past that we really enjoyed? And we brought on a few people that we used to work with. So you never know, like, when you'll be on somebody's mind that might, recall later on in your life. It could be, 5, 10, 15 years later down the road. But if you burn the bridges, they're going to remember that. And if you don't, they'll remember that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. We stress the importance of networking and getting to know people, building those strong connections. Because again, like, you never know who's who in the world, and who's going to start a new endeavor. And people always remember how you made them feel well before they ever remember what you actually did. So yeah, burning those bridges, you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot, when this should literally be the beginning of their beautiful careers. I mean, they're young, they're just starting out. And they have so many resources that we never had, like, LinkedIn, Indeed, all these places where they can be in that shared space and not have to even be in the same physical space, but they can network and they can grow their careers that way, which I think is really awesome. Whereas like you and I, we didn't have that coming out of school.
Right.
I think we had pagers.
Don't bring me.
Yeah. I was sharing that with a group of students, like how we used to do pagers and how we used to actually have to like figure out the code. I was like, this is prehistoric texting, guys. Too funny. Well, Joy, we're kind of wrapping up here. So there was some really good insight. I really do appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. Just, do you have any kind of like advice for students, especially, you're accounting, and we've got a large accounting department, but we also have so many other majors here that are going to be working in different industries and with different professionals. But especially on this particular topic, learning how to take the blame, even if it's not completely your fault, but sharing the credit. Do you have any like last minute advice you could give to students who are looking to develop this skill?
Yeah, sure. So I think number one is just to sit back and take inventory of yourself. Learn how you react to criticism. What happens when you start to get criticized, or to be told that you did something wrong? Do you tense up? Do you get quiet? Do you get mad? Do you yell? Do you just immediately pass the blame? But whatever it is that you typically do, can take a breath, take a step back, and stop and just breathe. Try to avoid passing the blame to others. Instead, just understand what went wrong. How did it happen? What role did you play? Like I said before, if you weren't directly involved, is there something that you could have done to avoid it, or is there something that you could do to help fix it from happening again in the future? And then also, as you are working with others, take note of what others are doing. Like when they do something right, just say thank you, or great job, or even go to their supervisors and say, I want you to know so and so did this. I just did that the other day, where I was kind of going through our month end issue with our trucks that we have, and because you have to cycle through the inventory, and getting, going through some of the locations and say, hey, you have this truck still sitting here, make sure that gets processed, blah, blah, blah. Long, boring story. But I wanted to let the managers know, hey, so-and-so did not have any old inventory sitting out, and that they did well in what they're in their processes. So be quick to praise others as well, and then that'll come naturally.
Yeah, I think that's huge without it being inauthentic. You don't want to blow smoke, but definitely praise and let people know that you are grateful for, their time, their effort. And then also too, I think praising, especially when they make mistakes and they own it. I'm not in a position right now to be over anybody, but I think about my own children, when they can openly accept responsibility, and just say like, yes, I'm sorry, I screwed up. My son did it today, just this morning. I texted him as we were leaving, do not forget all this food drive stuff that I had for you. It's in a bag. It's on the floor in your bedroom right next to your backpack. Make sure you take it. He's like, yes, okay. And then about a half hour later, he texts me, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I have no idea how I just walked right past it, but I forgot it. And I'm like, but he owned it. He didn't wait for me to come home and see it and be mad about it. Like, he was like, I screwed up. And so I can't be mad at that. Like, he's human. He made a mistake, and it's like, all right, whatever, dude. But, I took him out of the will, of course, but it was like, whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, Joy. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for sharing your insights and thoughts on this topic. Students, I hope that you learned something, and also always remember to click the QR code or the link I put in the chat pod, put it in a couple times for you, to get your attendance tracked for if you need it for class. Other than that, thank you everyone for coming. Have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend. And Joy, thank you again for your time.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one, everybody. Happy Friday.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.